So today we're diving into one of philosophy's great isms, rationalism. This is a quest for truth that makes a really bold claim. It says the deepest, most certain knowledge doesn't come from looking at the world around you, but from looking inward, at the incredible power of your own mind.
Everything really kicks off with this fundamental doubt. I mean, think about it. Our senses fool us all the time, right? A stick in a glass of water looks bent. You think you hear your name called in another room. Dreams can feel completely, utterly real. This simple but pretty profound problem is what drove philosophers to ask, hey, if we can't always trust our senses, what can we trust? What can give us certain, rock-solid knowledge? And that question, well, it kicked off this epic quest for a reliable, unshakable source of truth, a foundation that you could build all other knowledge on top of. Now, during the Enlightenment, as thinkers were wrestling with this, two major schools of thought emerged, and they offered two totally different paths. One path looked outward, to the world of our sensory experience. The other, it looked inward, to the power of the human mind itself. And that's the path we're walking down today, rationalism. It champions reason as the ultimate authority. The core idea here is that the most fundamental truths about the universe can be figured out through pure logic and intellectual thought, without ever needing to step outside and check your work, so to speak. This really sets up the central conflict perfectly. On one side, you've got the rationalists. They believe in what's called a priori knowledge. That's just a fancy way of saying knowledge you can have before or independent of experience. And on the other side, you've got the empiricists, like John Locke, who argued for a posteriori knowledge that comes directly from our senses. I love this quote from philosopher Galen Strawson because it just brilliantly captures what a priori knowledge feels like. Think about a simple mathematical truth like a triangle has three sides. You don't need to go out and measure every triangle in the world to know that's true, do you? Nope, you know it just by thinking about it. You can figure it out right there on your couch.
All right, so what does it actually take to be a rationalist? It's not some all-or-nothing deal. It turns out there's a kind of playbook. Philosophers have basically boiled it down to three core ideas that define rationalist thinking. And here's the interesting part. To be considered a rationalist, you just have to sign on for at least one of them. So let's break them down. First up, we've got the intuition/deduction thesis. The idea here is that we can grasp some basic truths directly just through rational insight or intuition. We just kind of see that they're true with our minds. Then, using the strict rules of logic and deduction, we can build upon those intuitive truths to figure out even more complex knowledge, all without ever having to rely on our senses. Okay, the second claim is even bolder. It's the innate knowledge thesis. This idea goes all the way back to Plato, who had this notion that learning is really just a form of remembering. The idea is that we're actually born with certain knowledge already baked into our minds. So experience doesn't teach it to us, it just kind of awakens it or triggers it, bringing it into our conscious awareness. And finally, there's the innate concept thesis. Now this one's a little different from innate knowledge. It's not about knowing facts from birth, but about having the very concepts themselves. I mean, think about it. How do we have a concept of perfection when we've never actually seen or touched or heard a perfect thing? Rationalists would argue that concept must be innate. It has to come from inside us. The philosopher Leibniz, he pushed back hard against the empiricist idea of the mind as just a blank slate. And he offered this amazing analogy. He said the mind is like a block of marble that already has veins running through it, which predisposes it to be sculpted into a figure of Hercules. The ideas, the potential, it's already in there. You just need reason to uncover it. So, who are the main figures who championed these ideas throughout history? Who are the philosophical rock stars here? Let's meet the titans of reason. So the roots of this stuff stretch way back to ancient Greece with thinkers like Pythagoras and Plato. But the movement really hit its peak in the 17th century with the big three of classical rationalism. And then, in the 18th century, a pivotal figure, Immanuel Kant, comes along and kind of changes the whole game. The story of modern rationalism really begins with this man, René Descartes. He was a brilliant mathematician and philosopher who decided to do something radical, systematically doubt everything he thought he knew, to try and find just one single thing that was absolutely undeniably true. And what did he find? This. He realized that even if some evil demon was deceiving him about everything, he couldn't be deceived about his own existence. Why? Because the very act of doubting, well, that's an act of thinking. And if he's thinking, he must exist. Cogito ergo sum. I think, therefore I am. And that became his rock-solid foundation for all other knowledge.
Following in Descartes' footsteps, you have Baruch Spinoza and Gottfried Leibniz. These guys took these rationalist principles and just ran with them. They built these vast, incredibly intricate philosophical systems, trying to explain the entirety of reality, everything from God to physics, using nothing but pure reason and deductive logic. It was like they were trying to write the instruction manual for the universe using only geometry.
But you know, philosophy never stands still. For every big idea, there's always a reaction. And the grand systems of the rationalists eventually faced a really powerful challenge, and a synthesis, along with some criticisms that still stick around today. And this is where the monumental figure of Immanuel Kant steps onto the stage. He looked at this centuries-long stalemate between the rationalists and the empiricists and basically proposed that maybe both sides were getting something right, but also something profoundly wrong. He argued they were asking the wrong question entirely.
Kant's solution was a total game changer. It was a synthesis of the two views. He agreed with the rationalists that, yeah, we have these innate mental structures that shape how we see the world. But he argued those structures are totally empty until they're filled with the stuff provided by our senses. As he famously put it, concepts without percepts are empty, percepts without concepts are blind. You need both.
But even after Kant, rationalism has faced its share of critiques. Some argue that it paints this kind of cold, overly mechanistic picture of the universe. And more recently, fields like neuroscience and psychology have really challenged the idea that we're primarily rational beings. They've shown that our emotions and our unconscious thoughts play this massive role in how we think and make decisions, something pure rationalism doesn't always have a good answer for.
And this leaves us with a question that echoes through the centuries, and frankly, right into our own daily lives. When you're faced with a problem or a doubt, when you're searching for what's real, what's your first instinct? Do you trust your own logic and intuition to guide you? Or do you get up off the couch and test your ideas against the messy, unpredictable physical world? The debate is far from over.